Now coming to tonight's session, please allow me to welcome Suma Natraj, the moderator of this session. Life begins at the end of the comfort zone. Suma is a true believer of that line. Enterprise cybersecurity expert and audit, compliance champion, she comes with 14 years of industry experience. She has worked in various countries to understand adaptability is the key to survival and success. She is currently working with IBM, focusing on making IBM Cloud Fed compliant. Suma is a proud alumni of the Institute, pursuing the EMBA program in product leadership. Great to have you here with us, Suma. Handing the session over to you now.
Hey, thank you, Shama. Thanks for that introduction. Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to welcome everyone to this session, and especially Dr. Ankur Narang, who is our speaker of the day. I would like to give a quick introduction to him. It's not going to be quick. So Dr. Ankur has 27 years of experience in senior technology leadership positions across MNCs, including IBM Research India and Sun Research Labs, US. He leads the AI team at HYKE currently, where he is building state-of-the-art models for vision, speech, and NLP for novel digital products. He has been awarded with numerous awards and recognition. To name a few, he was one amongst the top 10 data scientists in India in 2017 in recognition of solid scientific and industry contribution. In 2018, he was given the Top 50 Analytics Award at MachineCon conference in recognition of exemplary leadership. He holds BTech and PhD from IIT Delhi and has around 50 publications in top international computer science and machine learning conferences and journals, with 15 granted US patents and 20 pending. He has had multiple industrial track and workshop chair positions and has given invited talks in multiple international conferences. His areas of interest and expertise include artificial intelligence and machine learning, big data analytics, high performance computing, to name a few. Dr. Ankur, we are privileged to have you here with us today, and we're looking forward to learn amazing applications of data science and AI. The floor is all yours, sir.
Thanks, Suma. Thanks for a nice intro over there. So I'll take the audience over here to some interesting applications of AI in digital products, and looking forward to some interesting questions. And also kind of please ping me in between if you have some questions, and we can take it from there.
Sure.
So let me share
my. Shama, would you like to send those poll questions to our audiences?
Sure. I'll just launch the poll.
Thank you.
I hope you can see the first poll on the screen. So the question is, are you aware of application of data science in product building? So Dr. Ankur, this is basically to give you an idea for the background and the kind of profile that our audience comes with. So just to give you a better understanding.
Great. Thanks. So should I start?
Sure. Yes, please go ahead.
Thanks. Let me share my screen. Okay, so I guess you guys can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Excellent. So essentially, I'm going to cover on this area. Yeah. So here's the agenda for today. Essentially, we look at.
Dr. Ankur, so sorry to interrupt, but your screen sharing, we cannot see it anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let me set it up again. Give me 1 second. Can you see this now?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to cover the following agenda today, essentially giving an introduction to the fourth industrial revolution for people who may not be so much aware of what all has been the impact of the fourth industrial revolution so far, and how we have become a part of this revolution, and what kind of various applications and maturity models are part of this framework. And then we'll go into metaverse in particular. This has been kind of a latest buzzword, especially being Facebook getting into the meta mode, I would say, and as well the big players like NVIDIA and so forth. And looking at multiple AI applications, which are very strong use cases of digital products, and would kind of correlate that to the existing digital products in multiple various verticals that we have. Okay. So the fourth industrial revolution basically refers to extreme automation and connectivity, where essentially you have cyber physical systems, which are basically human and machine interfaces that interact and share information between each other. And you have robots which can do all different kinds of tasks, primarily in the manufacturing space, but not only so, essentially also in the energy sector, in the oil and gas sector, in the healthcare sector. So very large kind of enterprise spaces as well in the mining sector. And then also coming to the consumer space, where we have all the various digital products that we see and we are going to talk about. And this is basically getting supplemented with extreme automation and connectivity, where the AI is the enabler for all the various capabilities. And the data is essentially coming from connectivity, whether it is Internet of Things or industrial Internet of Things, and a huge quantity of data across, whether it is coming real time or batch mode, and that is getting fed as input. And then a lot of insights are getting generated in a combination of real time and batch mode analytics. And then that drives a lot of automation in various verticals. So we're going to discuss some of the automations today. So we are going through a data explosion, essentially through all this smart connectivity and automation at a large scale across the various sectors which I mentioned, and definitely across the consumer space with internet and so forth, and the video data being now starting to dominate as the mode of data that is kind of available to be processed and to be leveraged for the best of the consumer experiences and the business experiences. And you see this growing over there. And our universe is basically, digital universe is kind of maturing into a Bronto byte, which is 10 to the power 27 of the order of data that we are getting through, or we have total available. So AI in particular, as some people may be aware, other may not be aware. So I'll give some brief introduction over here. So AI essentially is about inferring and predicting and then optimizing, right? So essentially over here, there has been a whole gradual improvement of technologies over the last 15-20 years in particular, where there has been an exponential growth of the technologies. And some specific keywords that you might have heard are some of these that I mentioned over here, which are deep learning, deep reinforcement learning, which is essentially used in a lot of games that you see. So the AlphaGo game that has been developed by DeepMind, essentially that beats the best of Go players in the that are available, that are there in the game space for Go. Then we have transformers, which have been the whole, which have set the whole new benchmarks for performance across many of these verticals or kind of areas such as NLP, speech, and so forth. Then you have generative adversarial networks, essentially, which are used to generate new kinds of things. So AI not only infers that, hey, this is a cat, this is a dog in an image or a video, or the dog is kind of jumping, so the activity inference is there, but it is also generating those videos now. So you would have seen videos of people essentially, speaking something that they have not actually spoken at all, right? So that generative capability is what AI is now delivering through. The fundamental architecture is GANs over there, and there are lots of variations over there. There are capsule networks which supplement the CNNs in terms of various performance aspects. And then you have these base sequence models, which do time series prediction. Hey, this is my set of oil prices over the last 10 years, what is going to be my oil price in the future, which depends on so many extra factors. But that's what the correlation, essentially, the models which are driven by some of these sequential models like LSTM, GRUs, and RNNs in particular. So active use cases that we see in digital products, and all of us are well aware, are chatbots, Siri and Alexa, which essentially are driving fixed focused conversations to get a particular task done. And we have seen this, we are very familiar with these products. Then you have recommendation, which is a primary example being Netflix, and a lot of the people and what companies are now following fundamental deep learning based recommendation models, which adapt to the user behavior. And we see that in our everyday lives. With Tesla as self-driving cars, a dynamic revenue optimization to kind of have the best of, in digital products, essentially have the best of customer experience in terms of the pricing that the customer is really comfortable with, at the same time optimizing the revenue for the business. And then also various metrics along with it in terms of margin optimizations, total revenue optimizations, engagements, retentions, and all those metrics are associated metrics in this larger plethora of dynamic revenue and engagement optimizations, if you will. There's another space of finance and cybersecurity, where that is a whole separate area where cybersecurity with AI and bots essentially trying to understand and predict what kind of attacks can happen with the current set of patterns and how to fix it as well and take action at the right points of time so that you don't get into a damage mode and you start do firefighting. In healthcare, there has been a remarkable set of progress with AlphaFold, again from DeepMind. Now the whole set of protein structures are now available for researchers to use. And as you may be aware, protein structure prediction essentially is the holy grail, which can help solve a lot of the understanding the behavior of the whole aspects of the body, the fundamental systems of the body, and also to basically figure out the cures for the various kind of diseases that we have been seeing. And this has been a high kind of case of concern anyway with the recent COVID times. Then you have other things that AI can drive, which is earthquake prediction, by the way, which that has become also very nice, very accurate rather. And it has, even though it's a very complex problem of modeling the whole underlying surface of the earth, and then things like environmental conservation. So with so many applications available, what we typically measure in an enterprise is the maturity, right? So the maturity model essentially drives the significance of efficiency improvements with this set of models or the set of processes that we deploy in the company through the digital products that we have. And you see this essentially gradation. So you start with Industry 3.0, where we are basically talking about the fundamentals. Hey, let's computerize it, let's digitize it, let's get the first level of automation in place, and let's connect the things together and see what next we can do. So that's the Industry 3.0, which was in the early 90s and so forth, and even the late 90s. And the Industry 4.0 is on the right side on the x-axis that you see, where we first understand the visibility, which means what is happening over there. In the near term, getting the transparency of all the various aspects. Let's say the SCADA system, we are getting the data and understanding, doing kind of descriptive analytics, as we call it. And then that matures into predictive analytics, where you predict, hey, now in the longer term, let's say in the next 5 days or 10 days, who are the people who are going to travel in a travel kind of scenario? What is the oil price in a more financial kind of scenario? Or essentially in an engagement and retention kind of a set of products across any of the verticals, you can figure out how that is going to evolve, given a certain set of assumptions that are going to stay kind of similar. And finally, you go into adaptability, where you are then optimizing your processes, optimizing essentially the way the things happen, right? The whole set of kind of interactions in a system, let's say consider a digital product in focus, so that you are really able to get the best juice out of whatever the data insights are provided from the descriptive and also the predictive. So this is a maturity model of an organization. In Industry 4.0, you would be considered at a solid mature level, essentially, if you are really using it for optimizing things and delivering the best for the customer and also delivering the best for the enterprise itself. So then now I'll jump essentially to the metaverse. And the reason I took this example is not only because it is one of the latest trends that we see in the market, and it's also is a very, very strong application. It demonstrates multiple applications of AI for the digital products. And these are very representative set of applications in this space. and it encompasses a whole lot of variations of these AI applications. And then we can also discuss either through questions, or I will try to refer it through some of the examples in other verticals as well, or typical verticals that we talk about in the business space or startup space or even the enterprise space in India. So what is metaverse, right? In metaverse is basically looking at immersive experiences around activities. So these activities could be collaboration right now with a dominant virtual mode, kind of encouraged by the pandemic. Essentially, people want to collaborate online, right? So there is a video conference is one way of collaboration. There right now we are kind of I am talking, you are listening. We'll have interactions. That is one way of collaboration. But can we have more deeper collaboration? So in an immersive space, that would be kind of more of in the direction of what a metaverse would represent. Then can we have social interactions? Can we have creative expressions in this perspective, which can give a more better interaction between people? And then there are lots of other activities that I'm going to describe in this perspective. So a metaverse essentially has the following properties. It emphasizes on activities, right? The creators can create those activities. So the whole idea in metaverse is to drive the creator economy and the creative economy, where it's a more democratized kind of a system, where people who have the creativity in art, people have creativity in certain set of activities, whatever be the passion of the person, that can be presented and added to the metaverse in a very distributed fashion, and then that can be shared across a whole set of people within the metaverse, right? It is immersive experience. It's not a 2D experience, it's really a 3D experience, and I'm going to explain what that means. And then the creators essentially have the ability to link and embed that content, which is kind of evolving over time. So here are kind of layers of the metaverse architecture, where at the base, essentially you have the infrastructure, human interface. Infrastructure is basically the 5Gs and the 6Gs and the chip technologies and the GPUs and so forth, which essentially help to improve the computing that is required. Because when you are kind of building an immersive experience, you have a lot of computation and rendering that needs to be done, right? And then also essentially fast kind of a network, which is with extremely low latencies and very high throughput, is what 5G and 6G are enabling, with 6G again leveraging a lot of AI underneath the whole infra for the 6G. Then you have the human interfaces, which are some of you might be aware of wearables, which are AR, VR wearables. And we have been talking about this, if you have been aware, for the last 10 years also, right? Then there is decentralization layer, where people essentially are able to leverage blockchain to provide a decentralized environment rather than a typical centralized environments that we have seen so far. There are these rendering engines, or spatial computing engines as we call, which are enabling all the rendering and the computation, which is the spatial computing layer. Then we have the creator economy, where the design tools are available and the people are able to create lots of experiences and put this in the metaverse. Then you have discovery and the experience, which I'm going to go over next. So here is one experience. All of us would have played 3D games, right? Fortnite and so forth. And this is really one example of it. And you really get totally into it once you start playing into it, right? So this is one very good example. Once you have an AR, VR kind of a glass through which you are playing in this game, you even have a totally, you are pretty much out of the world in this experience. Here are more examples where essentially you have, a collaboration, as I mentioned, in an office kind of environment or in a different environment. You have live music, right? Or you have live games or esports. And these live music is more of a recent one. Collaboration is becoming more mature as the video conferencing systems are kind of evolving, as you would have seen recent kind of updates from Google, Apple, and so forth. And esports has been there for, I think, quite some time now, and there are like massive esports happening. And so this metaverse basically makes it more impactful and makes it more kind of pervasive. So what are the mega trends that are shaping the metaverse? And then essentially I'll basically go into the AI daily aspects of it. So the main trend, one of the main trends, is machine intelligence. So because AI has become very strong, and you have the computing and the infra and the networks and the cloud that is there, it is kind of, AI is able to leverage all of this infra and essentially then kind of leverage that from the bottom of the stack and then kind of deliver these capabilities on top of the stack, pretty much kind of in the architecture that you saw. And then you have the rise of cybernetics, which means haptics, and kind of interface, brain-computer interfaces through which, through your brain, you kind of control what is happening on the system, right? And I'm going to go into some examples of that. Then simulating the reality, basically you have like connecting with the actual kind of racing cars, with the actual data and maybe even real-time data. You're actually simulating a real car inside your system or the metaverse. Then you have blockchains, which are interesting part, though we are not going to cover that today. It's a topic by itself. And then you have the mainstreaming of virtual kind of things with the pandemic and so forth, and challenges by open platforms that are giving rise to more of that, along with low-code platforms. So coming to the kind of topic for the day, in this metaverse, which have essentially all different kinds of applications and experiences that I mentioned, here are some of the key enabling technologies that AI is able to deliver in terms of enablement for these applications or experiences in metaverse. So we have an AI assistants and AI agents. So AI assistants essentially are like voice bots or fixed kind of capability set of agents, which essentially can help in resolving, in communicating, and so forth. AI agents are essentially looking at setting up a particular kind of activity, and that could even be an advanced chatbot. It could even be like virtual beings in the system, and I'm going to have a slide on that later. And AI can also be a creative collaborator, as I mentioned, where essentially it is helping in generating things, as I mentioned, as the one key enabler technology being the GANs over there. So the chart over here essentially mentions about how the evolution has happened of the transformers as we go further. So right from the beginning, from June 18 to June 21, on the log scale, you can basically see the number of parameters that are growing on the log scale, essentially quite a bit over there, already a factor, multiple orders of magnitude that are happening. So what is happening is that because these models have become very powerful, that is being powered by the compute underneath, then a lot of the cases essentially are getting delivered by this. So this is interesting AI application, which is virtual beings. So virtual beings essentially, if you guys have not heard or even heard, the MetaHumans by Unreal essentially gives a very realistic rendering of the human body and the face, the hair and all the features, which is very, very realistic. So unlike other kind of avatar systems, MetaHumans by Unreal essentially is targeted towards a more realistic rendering. Now, in addition to that, the aspect that comes, which is more interesting on top of it, is the AI part of it. And that is where these virtual beings can be in the system, as you can also already see in Fortnite, for example. In Fortnite, they have one purpose, which is playing the games. In general, you can have these virtual beings in a kind of a collaboration platform setup or a collaboration immersive experience where they are powering the conversations, they are understanding the emotions, they are responding to the emotions, they are kind of being active part of the system. Then you have behaviors which can be personalized to a particular character or the aspect that you want that character virtual being to represent. Right, and you can even befriend this virtual being in the metaverse, and you kind of have a very good interaction with this kind of a person, right, or a personality that you have built up. So with these powerful models that are there, you can actually power this thing. Now, a kind of equivalent example, but may not be that much powerful from certain dimensions, but could be equally powerful from NLP and speech dimension, would be applications in customer experience voice bots that we see in various verticals. It could be kind of marketing bots that could be launched or kind of available for various kind of use cases in marketing for any vertical, I would say. So this capability of virtual being essentially encompasses all these things underneath and is all pretty much powered by AI, and obviously driven by that is getting kind of enabled by a lot of the other capabilities underneath. The next one essentially is around creator tools. Here, basically, if you are not familiar, but still just mentioning, is that there are companies like Promethean AI, which essentially uses the prompts from the creators to manufacture entire virtual landscapes, right? So what basically they are enabling the people or the creators to be able to express their creativity. right? So if you have some design in your mind that, hey, this is my virtual world I want to create and then launch in the metaverse, where I'll have users and maybe that people like my product, maybe I make a business out of it, and maybe I create a lot of engagement with the kind of large scale number of users, and maybe this kind of metaverse or this kind of virtual world links with another virtual world, and this whole thing becomes a large multiverse in some sense. Then this company essentially powers this whole creation process of the creator by having AI as the core capability over there. Another example there is Roblox. So Roblox has been there for quite some time now, and I'm sure a multiple of you would have heard about this. So it's basically YouTube for games, right? So essentially, as you can create videos and kind of upload into YouTube and kind of gather likes and so forth, right? Gather popularity over there, and you can impact multiple millions over there or hundreds of millions over there if you have kind of uploaded a very interesting video or a song and things like that. But essentially, Roblox is doing the same thing for games, right? So you are given the power to create the games that you like. That creation process itself is powered by AI underneath, right? And by creating that game, you can essentially launch that game into the current virtual world, which is part of the larger multiverse or the metaverse and so forth. So this is another example that I was mentioning earlier as an application of AI, where AI enables these capabilities, where pretty much you can have a real life car in front of you in an immersive environment, right? And this can be displayed for you in an augmented reality, which means you can be aware of your current surroundings and you can have this proper full-sized car in front of you. Or it can be in a virtual world. Let's say you are in a racing stadium and you are essentially seeing these cars racing around, right? So there's an enablement of real-time ray tracing, physics simulations, and you can also have the data feed in from the Internet of Everything, which essentially is from the real-time actual data. The data is feeding in from the real environment, and that impacts how your virtual environment is, on the metaverse, the virtual experience, immersive experience environment is going to get impacted. So you have geospatial and traffic data, and you can essentially also have oracles with real-time financial data, which can then, by the way, be used in what we have are NFTs, which are non-fungible tokens, and those are actually being used now to as you would have seen in the news, they are getting essentially used in a lot of people making a business out of it. And as that becomes a rare commodity, the price of that rises and that becomes more popular. And you now actually have games which are based on NFTs, and they have become very, very popular with very high valuations in the world. The next interesting part that AI can power is cybernetics. So cybernetics essentially is integration of the sensory systems with a computer system, basically, right? That's the simple definition of it. Some examples that you are well aware are game controllers. Haptics, basically you have kind of your feeling in the hand by essentially a special kind of systems that can get you that kind of engagement in a virtual environment. Augmented and virtual reality we discussed, right? Smart glasses, where essentially the glasses can recognize the current physical world, and it can manifest on top of it a virtual world, which is in an augmented reality mode. And that can have huge number of applications, helping a blind person, helping you find a map, looking at your emails in a kind of any kind of in a virtual fashion in front of you and things like that. And the Microsoft HoloLens has been one of the hallmarks over there, and it has already been there for some n number of years, maybe 10 years and beyond earlier. But these are now getting kind of getting the context in the particular set of these applications. Next, you have the brain-computer interface, and this is really interesting. In here, basically, what researchers have been showing, and now it has been quite multiple set of years, is where how can you control the way to kind of interact with a machine all directly through the brain instead of through the hands, right? So the brain-computer interface has quite a bit matured on the reading side of it, where the signals in the brain or whatever you think gets transferred into actions on your desktop here or on the particular kind of a computer system with which you are interacting. And it is also vice versa. So some companies are looking at vice versa, which means that you can have some things implanted in your brain as well, which is slightly on the risky side, but that's what the progress is happening quite a bit on the neuroscience part of it. So here are some augmented and virtual reality progress in terms of more bulkier glasses that we had some years back. Now we have much more elegant kind of wear or headset kind of for AR or VR, which is getting developed by Snapchat, one of the leaders in this space. And this is the BCI example, where essentially through invasive and non-invasive, across both of them, essentially, you are able to kind of control the system. So imagine a digital product where you have a BCI and the kind of UX that you are able to deliver on that, and the residual, the kind of the consequent impact on the engagement metrics and retention metrics, where the user can peacefully kind of think through, the various kind of actions that need to be taken, right? So this is a very, 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 very interesting technology. There are lots of startups in this in the BCI space. And we have the smart contact lenses as well. And in May, the metric of BCI has kind of reached like 90 words per second for a typing task, right? So these are some amazing set of applications that again AI is all enabling. So that's pretty much from my side. I kind of did a quick kind of overview of this whole slide set. But happy to take questions, and we can make this very interactive.
That was a great session, Dr. Ankur. Thank you so much. I mean, it's so interesting to see without our awareness, we are quite growing, awareness is growing that how much AI we consume on a day-to-day basis. If there are any questions, we can start taking, but I have a couple of questions.
Yes, just a quick reminder to the audience here, please post your questions in the Q&A window, or you can also come live and ask your questions directly to Dr. Ankur. You can raise your hand and I can unmute you for the question. Go ahead, Suma.
Great.
There are 2 questions in the window already, so you can go ahead and take them.
Yeah. It's amazing that how AI is acting, becoming an enabler in as to just most of the mission critical next gen solutions, right? Dr. Ankur, how can you give me an example or some use cases where AI has been used to an extent where cybersecurity is taken to the next level? We know that we are using some of the machine learning techniques here, but if you could give us an example of that, that'll be great. Yeah.
Sure. So I think in cyber security, essentially what people used to do in the relatively earlier phases, let's say 4 or 5 years back, essentially that is more looking at a pattern and understanding what kind of a virus kind of this would represent, right? And also figuring out an anomaly, which means given unknown patterns, what essentially is kind of novel over here, or this is a new virus and stuff. And so what has kind of transpired over the last few years is that as the attackers have become stronger, they are themselves using AI. The defenders essentially are using AI pretty much at real time in a kind of a bot-to-bot kind of an interaction or a kind of engagement, if you will. So the police bots, if you will, are able to detect the behavior of these malicious bots, right? Pretty much at real time, and then take corrective action as well, right? So right. I think that is one, I would say, a key development, and this is basically kind of coming from reinforcement learning based applications of AI. That's right.
Thank you, sir. I think there are lots of questions coming in. Shama, do you want to go ahead and
let's take this first question, Dr. Ankur. You can see them as well in the Q&A window. This is from Rajan. Do you think we are fast approaching technological singularity? Eventually, with machine becoming the dominant species in the near future, how does one catch up before and when that happens? Please do share your insights on this.
Yeah, this is an interesting. Sorry, this is an interesting question, and so there were predictions that I think there is some echo here. So
We can hear you clearly, Doctor.
okay, great. So basically, there were predictions that by 2025, we will go through this technological inflection point, and this was made by some of the top US professors, which I remember. And 3-4 years back, I kind of faced the same question. So the interesting thing is that our brain is so complex that it is hard for maths and computer science to kind of reach that level of maturity even so far. Even though lots of complex problems are getting solved, but there are a lot of even further complex problems that our brain can solve, which these kind of systems cannot solve. Having said that, there has been a tremendous progress on the AI side, on the technology side. So the point where on a practical basis, you would start seeing this particular aspect of technological singularity, that is definitely there. It is within the next 10 years. The way to look at it is that so people are looking at democratization of these capabilities, and that is the first one that is important, right? In which, as these functions become kind of more available to I would say multiple countries, nations, people, understanding, and so forth, right? Which is also getting enabled. What you are also seeing is that it's then you pretty much have that kind of bot or the intelligent robot or the intelligent system which helps you play with the other bots which other people have. So that's a better way of looking at it. So it won't be of that level which is like a Skynet kind of a thing, but it would definitely be of this level of interaction.
That's a very interesting take on the question, Dr. Ankur. And Ranjan, please post your comments also on the chat window to know if we have clarified your doubt. So the next one is from Vatsalya Jain. What is the preparedness we all need to work upon in terms of technology and business to get onto the metaverse momentum?
Cool. So basically, the metaverse is getting enabled through multiple key technologies. If you get a handle of those technologies, or at least a subset of those technologies, you can be part of that momentum, right? So some of those technologies are, one is definitely some key components of the AI part. The other part essentially are these tools, which are the spatial computing tools, or right now we call them also in a typical earlier terminology, we used to call them rendering engines or graphics rendering engines like Unity, Unreal Engine, and so forth. Right. Then there are these creator tools like Roblox and Promethean AI that they are creating. So getting familiarity with those tools. There are those from a product side, there are those product angles that these tools are able to drive, which are very novel compared to a typical digital product you would see in e-commerce and other kind of verticals we typically see in India, or the growth of startups so far. So these are the points at which you want to kind of start preparing yourself and kind of take some steps forward in each of these areas, and that will make sure that you are able to catch to the momentum. So since this is an earlier kind of I would say an initial phase of momentum, so this is the right time to catch through it. And as we go further, you would see more and more kind of experiences, applications, and so forth getting built in this space. Now, just to add over here, essentially the AR, VR, and some of these technologies already did exist pretty much like 6-7 years back, right? That time they could not succeed from a business point of view, and there are a whole lot of applications and startups that worked on this. And the Microsoft HoloLens, if you want to check out, that's a very, very good example and very, very interesting one. Though right now the actual headset that they had, it would have been simplified because of the tech improvements now that I think Snap is trying to kind of follow through in the application that they are building. So understanding at least an overview of the hardware part of things, or these aspects of the hardware, but fundamentally on the digital product side, if you have kind of a ramp up on that you can do on some of these areas which I mentioned, that definitely makes sure that you are up there to catch the momentum.
Great, that was amazing. And Vatsalya, I hope that answers your question. So the next question is from Abhijit. How can AI help in data visualization and business intelligence?
Correct. So basically, data visualization essentially can be so right now in business intelligence we have more of a manual thinking process that this is the particular set of things you want to look at and focus on, right? For inferring on a certain set of business metrics, right? So AI can help you kind of get much smarter metrics out of there. That is number one, right? Then you can work on what should you optimize in your process so that you improve those metrics, right? And then even from a data visualization standpoint, there are some interesting startups or applications where essentially you can just speak into a kind of a system in like a natural language speech and some language, let's say English or even Hindi plus English and so forth, and it's going to generate the visualization for you, right? So that kind of in some sense democratizes the access to it, access to people, in which even a kind of a HR person or an admin person who has some questions about an organization, that can all be enabled just to a natural language question. Further, the choice of the visualization that can be adapted with an underlying kind of AI approach, so that is more suitable to the person's likings. So let's say I would like to visualize through pie charts or histograms more than I would like to visualize through maps. So it would kind of, although it is data dependent as well, but there are aspects of it that could be tuned. So personalization of data visualization, the interaction with the data visualization, right, and the way the data visualization itself is chosen, all of that essentially can be kind of enhanced through AI.
Perfect. And for the first question we took, Dr. Ankur, Rajan has replied in the chat window. Thank you for answering my question and offering a new perspective of bots and interacting with one another. It is a relief to know that the human brain is complex enough for the machine to not yet surpass it. Do you agree with that?
Yes. So in AI, we have these levels of artificial general intelligence and artificial super intelligence. And we are at AI only, and that is the current level, which is artificial intelligence by itself. So artificial intelligence essentially means that we have this independent task. I want to train a speech model. I want to train a vision model. I want to train a kind of a natural language NLP model, and the AI will do that task. And if you change anything, if the model is not robust, it will break. You have to tune the model quite a bit. You have to go through lots of data. So these are data intensive models. First of all, they are not general enough, right? They take a lot of time to kind of learn through, but then you can use machines to speed up. The AGI says basically now this model can kind of be more general. One model can do multiple tasks, and that has not been fundamentally possible. There are some examples, and our brain is fundamentally working at an AGI level, artificial general intelligence. And artificial super intelligence says that, hey, now this model can surpass the human in that abstract thinking capability. So the abstract thinking that we have essentially in our minds, that combines with logical reasoning and the creativity part, that the machines are still far behind, right? So it's a really a good situation to see that we have that dominance right now. Obviously, there are lots of AI research labs powered by billions of dollars where people are trying to crack it. So that is kind of a dominance equation, if you will, but it's not there yet, I think, and that's a publicly known kind of fact. So that's a true statement.
Audience, yet another reminder to you all, please go ahead and ask your questions in the Q&A window and make the best of the time that we have with Dr. Ankur. Alternatively, you can come online and ask your questions. All you need to do is raise your hand and I can unmute you. Now, the next question here is, how is India placed in the development race on the AI front?
Right.
This is from Manoj. Yeah.
Yes. So in India, I would say we have started, we have live applications of AI in multiple verticals, whether they are chatbots or whether they are, kind of oil and gas vertical, or they are mining vertical. Mining maybe not so much, but I think people have started looking at it. Traditional kind of digital the verticals which have gone ahead in the digital space, like travel and finance and others, they are using AI quite a bit. And so from that perspective, it is the first two levels of including AI essentially is already there, right? You see that sophistication happening in India. So even the large scale personalization across various products, right? And that is already happening, and that is already embedded in the digital products that we have in India. Now, the more deeper, interesting applications is where we lag behind. right? And those are essentially being done by core US labs or China labs or DeepMind or OpenAI and so forth. So that is where we have the academic institutes like IITs, ISCs, and so forth doing some interesting work. Or we have, let's say, Google Research, and we have IBM Research. They're doing some interesting work over there. But fundamentally, I would still say we are kind of way behind with China now, that is leading the world, and US behind that, and then we have some countries in Europe, right? So we are there, but we are kind of, it's also becoming a race, right? Because what happens is that in AI, new models get released every 3 to 6 months, and these are very powerful models. So if you don't keep track of it as an individual, as a company, as a nation, and so forth, actually you are getting behind. Another metric that you see essentially is the number of research papers that are kind of accepted at top conferences like NIPS, right? And so, China, in one university in China, essentially publishes pretty much like 50 research papers in 1 year in that, right? And they are sitting over the top, and they are even beating MIT on compared to this particular throughput that they have. So it's between US and China, it's a very fast kind of race, and they are kind of after each other. But India is behind, so we need to catch up. And that catch up is from a technological enabling capability, because it has a lot of social and economic impact for us, right? As you would see, the government pushing that agenda pretty deeply. But also from an academic standpoint, and also from an individual growth standpoint, it's pretty important to kind of push this further.
Absolutely, and with the rapidly changing consumer behavior every day, it's even more, important that we, implement this in every organization going forward.
Yes.
So the next question is from Ayush Das. Do business management processes play a particularly important role in the context of the effective functioning of business entities in currently developing economics based on knowledge, information, and technology?
That's a nice question. Let me understand. Is this in the context of AI in some sense?
Ayush, why don't you come online and ask your question? Please raise your hand so I can unmute you. I believe it is in the context of AI.
Okay. So let me try to
hold on, Dr. Ankur, 1 second. I'll just unmute him so he can give us clarity on the question.
Sure.
Go ahead, Ayush, ask your question.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, Ayush, go on. We can hear you.
Yeah. Actually, this I have asked a question that it is coming from in the mind from the morning. That's why I have joined this session. Actually, I didn't know about this session. I has booked my show, and after that I have joined it.
Ayush, why don't you tell us more about the question here? What is the intent behind it? What do you want to know exactly from this? Could you please provide a little clarity, whether it is related to in the context of AI and data science?
Yeah, it is contents of EIA data science.
Okay. Thank you, Ayush. Thank you for that.
Okay. So I think let me give my feedback on the question, and you can see if I've understood your question correctly. So essentially, the way you want to understand is how the business management processes, they impact the various business entities, which are fundamentally looking at developing knowledge, information, and technology, right? So I think this seems more like either it's an enterprise level question, I guess, right? Where right. So definitely, I think so. At a larger level, AI can be used for planning, right? Monitoring and predicting how the whole system behaves, right? So if you're looking at a business management process, then essentially you have to model and get the data for how a business particular business that you're looking at works out, right? And what a particular product or outcome that you're targeting. Once you have that in mind, then essentially you can model the whole process and stream the data for the particular process, and then you can use AI models to see what are the dominant aspects or business entities which are impacting the development of knowledge, information, and technology, right? So you need to sharpen essentially the aspects that you want to kind of study. So in general, the answer is yes. If you want to go deeper into it, you want to sharpen the metrics that you want to measure for each of the impacting quantities, final impacted quantities, which you are looking at in terms of knowledge, information, and technology. And then you also need to look at how the input architecture is what you want to study.
Thank you, Ayush, for this question. Moving on, Dr. Ankur, we will take one more question in view of the time constraints. I know you need to log out at 9 sharp. So the concluding question would be: innovation is being done worldwide. Any good seminars, forums, events you can suggest to keep track or to be abreast on these new developments? Any suggestions from your end?
Yeah, so basically, I think if you, I think you have to just kind of, I would say just a simple, I would say suggest is that there are various kind of forums which give kind of track of innovation from the various perspectives. Let's say we take AI as a innovation area, right? There are multiple other innovation areas like blockchain and so forth. So you take that as an innovation area, and then essentially for there, you want to see what level of information are you looking at in terms of innovation in AI. Are you looking at a higher level innovation, impact, where you're looking at how the various developments in AI are impacting the way countries work, systems work, the way enterprises or the businesses are changing over time, and the way they are innovating, right? What are the impacts, how they are growing, what is the startup aspects? That is one level. So you want to choose essentially the particular kind of forums, events, basis that kind of criteria. Another criteria you could choose that, hey, look, I have a fair good idea over there. Maybe I can keep track of it, but I really want to see what is going underneath it. What are the AI kind of aspects from a technology standpoint that is impacting this level of kind of growth or impact, right? So then you have different forums, right? And then you're looking at related, what are the adjacent technologies to which AI needs to be combined. Let's say what product thinking, how the product thinking needs to change so that you can actually, or how do you design products which leverage AI the best and deliver the best metrics. Then that is the kind of thinking or different forum and event that you want to track. So there is no one answer to this. I think there are lots of forums and events that for each of these three kind of criteria, there can be multiple criteria as well. So you choose a criteria, and I would say the best thing, it seems to be a degenerate answer, but the best thing is then with that criteria, figure out in Google search, what are the forums and events that you like, right? Because if you look at technology-based conferences, there are lots of conferences which can give huge amount of details, what is happening, and you can get totally mentally swamped with it. If you look at industry and product-related stuff, you can look at various forums and in fact organizations which are driving this kind of information. I would say, let's say if you take the Analytics India magazine, that's a good forum where you can subscribe to them, and they have good articles coming over there. If you have the medium.com, that gives good data science articles and impact also at a technical level, at a business level also, right? So these are just two examples. Pardon me, I didn't give you a lot of examples here, which would have been anything more concrete for you. But that is the way you want to go through learning this or getting through this.
Perfect. I think the Q&A was brilliant here, Dr. Ankur. We have a few more questions, but in view of the time constraints, we'll take them offline. I'll send the questions over to you, and then that way we can answer the audience questions, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be able to help you.
Perfect. And for the final and the most exciting part of the session, for the best question award, Dr. Ankur, I request you to pick a question which deserved the award that I mentioned before, Taylor Scholarship of $200. So if you could help me out with the winner.
Sure.
There are a few in the answer section and few are still open. So any question is relevant if you think it's good. Suma, you can also help in picking the best question.
Sure. Dr. Ankur, do you need any help? I have one question in mind, which I think I drew immense value from. So there was a question from Vatsalya Jain. The question was, what is the preparedness we all need to work upon to get on to the metaverse momentum? I think we all learned a bit more from that question. Yeah, so I would suggest that.
Yes, I think I agree. I was looking at the same question. In
Okay.
fact, I had these two questions in mind. The first one, which is the singularity point of technology or AI, and the second one was this one. This seemed to be slightly more relevant in the current context.
That's true.
That one was more generic in the larger context, but I'm fine with having the preparedness part as the winner.
Perfect. Congratulations, Vatsalya, on winning the Taylor Scholarship. We'll get in touch with you with the reward shortly.
Congratulations, Vatsalya.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Dr. Ankur, for the brilliant and engaging session. Your keynote was captivating with some relevant and useful insights. It's been a complete pleasure having you here. Please accept this certificate of appreciation from the Institute, a small token. We are grateful for the time and effort you took to share your thoughts and insights drawn from your experience and journey in the industry.
Definitely. Thanks, Shama, and thanks, Suma. It has been a very interesting the last 1 hour, and I really enjoyed this session.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you,
Ankur. And
Dr.
if you scan the QR code on the certificate, it'll take you to a dedicated Hall of Fame page that we have created for you, which will hold the recording of this session. And we'll upload the recording on YouTube as well. Thank you once again for joining us and sharing your amazing insights.
Thank you so much. Have a nice evening.
You too. And thank you, Suma, for moderating the session seamlessly.
Absolutely, Shama. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
And audience, if you found today's keynote useful, take a few seconds to share your feedback, experience, and perspectives on this session to inspire others to join and learn from the subsequent sessions. Please scan the QR code to share your feedback. Your feedback is critical for us to make improvements for the next round of the festival.